Hello, my name is Sperry, and I am with the IBM Education Group for Spectrum Protect and Spectrum Protect Plus. In this video, we're going to do a short video on Spectrum Protect Plus catalog backup and recovery. Just a couple slides, and then I'm going to do a demo of the process, or at least doing a test of the process. So to just kind of get started, Spectrum Protect has a database, or Spectrum Protect Plus has a database, I should say, and it is basically a proprietary database that includes proprietary components necessary to operate the system. It's the metadata of Spectrum Protect Plus. Now it does include MongoDB, but it also includes some other things that are necessary for system operation. You can and should back up or protect your Spectrum Protect Plus catalog to a vSnap server in case you have any corruption or in case you lose a site. Then you can restore that catalog from vSnap. Now the way that you do this is you define an SLA for catalog backup, and then you go in there and assign that SLA to the data protection operation, or to the catalog protection operation. That SLA is going to be associated with a specific site and have a specific schedule, and it's going to back up the catalog to that site on that schedule. And as I mentioned earlier, you should have a physically separate site from the Spectrum Protect Plus server to ensure that if you lose that entire site and the Spectrum Protect Plus server, you still have the catalog. Just like any other SLA in Spectrum Protect Plus, you can also control replication from vSnap to vSnap, and that is defined in the SLA. And then finally, beginning in 10.1.8, I believe, or maybe late in 10.1.7, we did go in and add notifications and warnings to the top of the Spectrum Protect Plus GUI, just to let you know what the status of the catalog backup is, because this is critical that you do it. Maybe you forgot, or maybe some people didn't set it up for whatever reason, and that's not a good thing from a DR perspective. A few notes on recovery. When you do a recovery, it's a GUI operation. It's really very easy. You're going to see when I do the demo. And it is going to overwrite the existing Spectrum Protect Plus catalog. So you do want to be very careful when you do this, particularly for a DR test, that you don't overwrite your production catalog, or that you don't want to lose what's in your production catalog, because then it's gone. You can recover from the original location of the backup, a replicated copy on vSnap, or a replicated copy out to an S3 object server. But if you're recovering from an S3 object storage server, you must have at least one vSnap in the environment if you're doing that type of restore. One thing to note, and I myself was bitten by this not long ago, beginning in 10.1.7, we enhanced the performance of the restore by recovering the main catalog first. And what that means is that the catalog recovery will finish, but the recovery index for file level recoveries and also the job logs are going to continue to run in the background. And it may take a few hours or even longer for these items to show up in the GUI. So if you finish the restore, log on, and don't see your job logs immediately, just know that nothing has necessarily gone wrong. It's just that that restore is running in the background and might take some time. For DR testing, you probably want to go through this process for a disaster recovery test to make sure that you know what you're going to do and practice it. But do understand that in Spectrum Protect Plus, you can't have two simultaneous Spectrum Protect Plus servers writing to the same vSnap. So what you're going to do is, for a DR test, you are allowed to point to the vSnap or the vSnaps that are in the environment, in the production environment, but you just need to make double sure that the jobs and the backup jobs are not running and writing data to those vSnaps. You should be treating those vSnaps and that data as read-only. The way you're going to do that, and you'll see when you restore the catalog, there'll be an option that'll say disable all the schedules, don't run them, and that's what you're going to choose. For those of us who've been doing data protection, data resilience for a long time, we all know that these disaster situations, or if you're attacked by ransomware or whatever the situation, if you're the administrator who's doing this or the person who's doing this, it can be a very high stress situation. Usually there's somebody looking over your shoulder, or lots of people looking over your shoulder, wanting to make sure that things are going to go well, etc., etc., etc. It can also be a little complex, right? You want to make sure you do things right. And for those two reasons, I highly recommend that you have a run book for this. Try it as a test. Document yourself, a cheat sheet, a run book, whatever you want to call it, just so you know step by step, this is what I'm going to do when this situation arises. And that helps alleviate some of the stress and make sure that you don't make any mistakes, so to speak. And then finally here, I put a note for the restore logs for 10.1.8. They are in the data log catalog protection directory on the Spectrum Protect Plus appliance. We have a very small database here, so I don't even think we're going to have a chance to see them. But you can go in there and look at those logs, do an ls-ltr, and look at the latest files in there, and you'll see those logs, and you'll be able to tell essentially what the restore is doing and see any issues that might have happened during the restore. So all that being said, let's do a little demo of a disaster recovery test, just so you can see what this looks like and get a sense of how it works. Okay, so here we're going to take a look at a demo of doing a catalog restore, and I'm going to do this as if I'm doing a DR test. So I am going to leave my production intact and restore into a new instance of Spectrum Protect Plus that I'm going to test, or you would be testing if you were doing a DR test. Now, just want to kind of start out by just showing you how this production Spectrum Protect Plus is set up. If I go to my policies, you'll see here I have a policy called SPP Catalog. And if I take a look at that, you'll see that I am doing a backup of the Spectrum Protect Plus catalog, retaining it for 15 days, and storing it on the primary snap. I'm also replicating that backup to a vSnap at a secondary site, and I'm also storing additional copies of that backup on object storage, on a cloud object storage server that I have. So that's what the policy looks like. And if I go down here to Spectrum Protect Plus and backup, you'll see that I've gone ahead and applied that policy to the catalog, and you can see all of the runs of that job that have completed successfully. Now, what I'm going to do is I have over here a new copy of Spectrum Protect Plus that I'm going to be testing in the Spectrum Protect Plus server. And this is just an empty instance of Spectrum Protect Plus that I've installed from OVA. So it's just a blank copy of Spectrum Protect. There are no jobs, as you can see, in the last 12 hours that have run. It's just out of the box. So in order to restore the catalog, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take a look, and as you can see here, I have no vsnaps defined to this Spectrum Protect Plus. So I'm going to add a vsnap to this Spectrum Protect Plus, and the vsnap that I'm going to add is going to be my vsnap that I'm storing the backup on. So it happens to be, in my case, this IP, 9.11.221.168. So we'll do 9.11.221.168. I'm going to call this site primary here, although it's not going to make a difference when I restore. And my user ID is going to be server admin. And my password here, I'm going to type in. Okay, so now I have my vsnap defined on the Spectrum Protect Plus server that I am restoring to. Now I am ready to do the restore of the Spectrum Protect Plus catalog. So I'm going to go to Manage Protections, Spectrum Protect Plus, and I will do a restore. And I am just going to point to this particular vsnap that I just defined to this new Spectrum Protect Plus server. And here you can see, I can now see all of the catalog backups that I have from the production system. I just want you to note too that in addition to seeing the catalogs that are stored directly on that vsnap, I can also see the cloud copies or the object storage copies. So you have to have a vsnap in place in order to be able to see the object storage copies. For my purposes, I'm just going to restore directly from this vsnap. And here again, since this is a DR test, I do not want to overwrite my production system. So I'm making double sure that I am on the DR test system. And I'm going to click on Restore. And note I have two options when I do the restore. Well, first, note it is going to overwrite the catalog on this test Spectrum Protect Plus server. And I also have two options to suspend all the scheduled jobs or just restore the catalog without suspending all the scheduled jobs. Since I am pointing to my production vsnap in the case of this DR test, I do not want jobs to run against that production vsnap at the same time that my regular Spectrum Protect Plus production server is running. So I am going to suspend all scheduled jobs and click on Restore. Confirming, are you sure you want to do this restore? And I'm going to go ahead and click on Yes. Now, note that the Spectrum Protect GUI logged me out, and the reason it did is because it is now restoring the database and restarting the Spectrum Protect Plus server with that new database. So I'm going to pause for a second and let that restore complete and let the Spectrum Protect Plus server restart. Okay, now I am ready to test my restored database, and This took me about 5 minutes in my case. And again, for me, my database is very small, so most of that time was spent just rebooting the Spectrum Protect Plus server after the database restore completed. Note here that the password here is not going to be the password I set up, right? But I am using the old database from the production side of things. So I'm going to need to log in here using the password that came from production. So I'll go ahead and click on sign in. And this is my test instance. And note that if you click on jobs and operations of the last 72 hours, you'll see all of the jobs that have run. I'll just go ahead and do a few other things just so you can see what things look like here. And note that for my database, things are pretty small, so I do have my job logs back immediately. For you, it might take a little longer. Note here, I also have all of my vsnaps defined, and remember, this is a DR test. I do not want to write to them. So, but they're there for me to do testing from. And also all of my object storage servers defined. So that's what a catalog restore looks like, how it works for you to do testing. I hope you found this information useful, and I'll end the video there. I look forward to seeing you in an upcoming video. Thanks a lot.